Perhaps you are lying there, feeling the weight of an invisible shield you have been carrying through the long hours of your day. Maybe you can feel the phantom fatigue in your shoulders, a tension that remains even though the work is done and the doors are locked. It is a specific kind of exhaustion. Dear friend, it is the weariness that comes from believing that if you ever stop standing guard, if you ever set down your vigilance, something fragile inside, you will simply shatter. You have been moving through your life as if you are shielding a lantern in a sudden howling storm. You believe that your only purpose is to ensure the flame does not go out, even when the wind has long since died down. The room around you is quiet, but there is still a faint echo of the world pressing against your senses. Feel the cool fabric of your sheets beneath your palms. Notice the way the air feels still and grounded against your skin, and hear the absence of the demands that pulled at you all day. You do not need to perform here. You do not need to be the person who holds everything together or the one who repairs every crack before anyone else notices. There is a sense of safety here that you have not allowed yourself to inhabit for a very long time. You are not broken for feeling this way. What you are experiencing is not a failure of character or a lack of strength. It is merely a habit of the heart that has outstayed its welcome. We often believe that our anxiety is the wall protecting us from the chaos of the world. But tonight we might find that the wall is actually keeping us from our own peace. You do not need to solve your life tonight. You do not need to calculate how you will be enough for everyone tomorrow, or how you will fix the things that feel unfinished. Tonight is not for fixing. Tonight is for finally setting down the weight that was never yours to carry. There is a strange and beautiful paradox in this. We think that peace is something we must earn through constant effort and perfect control. Yet the Buddha taught that peace is not found by adding more struggle to our lives. It is found by realizing that the very effort we use to protect our happiness is the thing that makes us lose it. Think about the way a hand cramps when it tries to hold water. The more tightly you squeeze your fingers to keep the water from slipping away, the faster it disappears through the gaps. You are not losing your value because you are tired. You are only discovering that the strength you relied on to survive is no longer the strength you need to rest. Maybe you have felt this quiet ache before, the feeling that if you stop holding the lantern, you will be left in the dark. But what if the light does not come from the lantern at all? What if the light is simply what you are, and the lantern is only a heavy, ornate container you have been dragging across miles of rough ground? We will spend our time together exploring this. We will look at how we turn our lives into a series of tasks and how we can learn to stop treating every thought as an urgent command that requires our total obedience. There is no pressure to understand everything at once. If your mind wanders to the tasks of tomorrow, let it go without judgment. You are not doing this wrong. To notice that your mind is wandering is actually the first step toward arriving here. It is the beginning of the end of the struggle. When you catch yourself thinking about the future, just notice it, and then gently return your attention to the feeling of your body settling into the mattress. Let the breath move in and out, not because you are trying to change your heart rate, but because you are finally giving yourself permission to just be a body resting in the dark. This is a space where nothing is required of you. You do not need to be smart or productive or brave or even calm. You can be tired. You can be anxious. You can be heavy. All of these things are welcome here because they are part of the journey back to your own center. We will take this very slowly, following a path that has been walked by many who felt exactly as you do now. You are safe enough to soften. You are safe enough to open your hands. Think of the lantern you have been carrying. Imagine its weight, the way it pulls at your muscles, the way your focus is entirely fixed on the flame inside. You are so terrified of the wind that you have forgotten how to walk without checking your shadow. But look at the room around you. There is no wind here. The night is still. The shadows are not threatening you. They are just the natural result of there being a light in the room. And even if the light were to dim, the darkness would still be a place of rest, not a place of danger. In the next part of our time together, we will enter a place where an old weaver once sat in a mountain hut trying to repair a tapestry that she believed was holding her entire world together. As we prepare for that story, let your breath become a little deeper and let the muscles in your face, your jaw, and your neck simply let go of their hold. There is no one to impress here. There is nothing to prove. You have done enough. You have been enough for a long time. Now, simply let the day dissolve and listen for the rhythm that exists underneath all the noise. Far up in the misted mountains, there lived a woman named Kaylin who spent her days in a small, weathered hut beside a river that ran cold and clear. She was a weaver of rare skill, known for creating its tapestries that seemed to hold the very colours of the dawn and the deep, rich hues of the forest floor. The village below depended on her work, for she crafted the heavy, protective veils that hung across the entrances of the main temple, shielding the interior from the biting mountain winds. Kaylin believed with her whole heart that these veils were the only thing preventing the temple from being reclaimed by the storm. She worked from the first light of dawn until the stars were bright and sharp in the night sky, her fingers moving across the loom with a frantic, rhythmic precision. She lived in a constant state of bracing, her shoulders hunched as if she were personally holding up the roof of the shrine. Every time a gust of wind rattled the wooden shutters of her hut, she would startle, her gaze darting to the loom. She would check the warp and the weft, her eyes searching for the smallest imperfection, the tiniest fray in the threads that she felt might be a doorway for the cold. She believed the temple's safety was her sole, heavy responsibility. If a thread snapped, she felt a sharp pain in her own chest, as if she were tearing. She did not know how to sit still, for she felt that if she rested, the wind would surely find a way inside. One afternoon, when the wind was particularly fierce, an old woman arrived at Kaylin's door. The visitor was a master weaver who had long ago retired to a silent life in the higher peaks. She stood in the doorway, her hands tucked into the wide sleeves of her grey robe, watching Kaylin work. Kaylin was struggling with a complex pattern, her breath coming in shallow, ragged bursts. The master did not speak. At first, she simply stood there, listening to the clack of the wooden shuttle and the rough sound of Kaylin's breathing. After a long while, the visitor walked to the center of the room and picked up a heavy, ornate clay lantern that sat on a low table. The lantern was encrusted with dried clay and layers of dust, yet Kaylin kept it polished until it shone like gold. She believed it was a sacred heirloom that needed constant attention, for she felt that its glow kept the shadows of the room at bay. She was always buffing it, always adjusting its position so the light hit the walls just right, always worried that it would smudge or darken. The master weaver looked at the lantern for a long moment, then turned to Kaylin and asked a single, quiet question. She asked if the lantern needed to be polished in order to provide the light, or if the light was something that lived within the clay. Kaylin stopped her weaving. She looked at the lantern, then at her own trembling hands, and she felt a sudden, strange heaviness in her chest that had nothing to do with the work. The master weaver did not wait for an answer. She simply set the lantern down on the floor, not in the center of the table where it was usually displayed, but on the rough, uneven wooden floorboards near the door. Then she walked over to the loom, reached out, and held one of the threads that Kaylin was so desperately retrying to repair. It was a thread that had been knotted many times, pulled tight by years of fear and frantic effort. The visitor told Kaylin that the tapestry was not a wall, but a veil, and that a veil is meant to move with the air, not to stand against it. She pointed to the window, where the wind was pushing against the shutters, and suggested that perhaps the wind was not an enemy to be kept out, but a force that could reveal what was truly strong. She asked Kaylin to take her hands off the loom for just a moment. Kaylin hesitated, her fingers twitching with the urge to reach back and secure the threads. But the master's presence was so calm, so grounded, that she finally let her arms drop to her sides. In that silence, for the first time in years, the room felt different. The sound of the wind outside did not change, but Kaylin's reaction to it did. She was not bracing. She was not shielding. She was simply standing in the room, her hands hanging loose, her shoulders finally resting against the space behind her. The master weaver leaned down and picked up the clay lantern again. This time, holding it by its handle, and she turned it toward the wall where the tapestry hung. She showed Kaylin that the light from the flame inside was not dependent on the lantern's outer shine. Even with the dust and the cracks, the light remained exactly as it was, constant and clear. Kaylin watched the light dance on the woven threads, and she saw for the first time that the holes she had been frantically mending were not structural flaws. They were spaces where the light could pass through. The temple did not need her to hold the wind back. The temple was built to withstand the seasons, and the veil she wove was only ever intended to be a soft barrier, not a fortress. She looked at her hands, which were calloused and red from the labor, and she realized that all this time she had been treating her own life as if it were a fragile container that might break at any moment if she stopped polishing, if she stopped protecting, if she stopped the constant, exhausting cycle of performance. The master weaver placed the lantern back on the floor near Kaylin's feet, the soft glow casting long, gentle shadows that flickered against the grain of the wood. She did not offer a lecture. She did not tell Kaylin what to do next. She simply reminded her that the weaver is not the tapestry and the light is not the lantern. Kaylin sat on the floor, the heavy, ornate container of her worries suddenly feeling lighter, as if the effort she had been pouring into it was finally beginning to drain away into the earth. Beneath the floorboards, she realized that she had been fighting a storm that existed only in the way she held her own mind. She watched the flame in the lantern. It did not flicker because of the wind that blew through the cracks in the wall. It stayed steady, and she found her own breath beginning to mirror that steadiness. The room seemed to expand, the walls growing less like a cage and more like a shelter. Kaylin closed her eyes, and the sound of the river outside, which had always felt like a threat, now sounded like a companion, a constant, flowing reminder that everything in life is in motion, and that nothing stays fixed, no matter how tightly we try to hold it. She felt the urge to stand up and fix the threads one last time, a lingering habit of the mind that whispered of disaster if she did not finish the work. But she recognized the thought for what it was. It was just a visitor, a memory of fear that no longer had a place in her home. She let it pass, like a cloud moving across the mountain peaks. She was not the wind. She was not the veil. She was the space in which the weaving happened. The master weaver slipped quietly out into the mist, leaving the door slightly ajar. Kaylin did not run to close it. She simply sat there, letting the cool, mountain air drift into the room, watching the light from the lantern dance in the dark. It was the first time she had truly felt the weight of her own body being supported by the earth, rather than being the support for everything around her. And in that stillness, the long, frantic rhythm of her day finally began to slow down to the pace of the night. You might wonder why Kaylin, in that quiet mountain hut, felt such a crushing weight, even when the sun was shining and the river was calm. It is because she had mistaken the act of protecting her life for the act of living it. Her suffering was not found in the wind that rattled her shutters, nor in the gaps of her weaving. The suffering grew in the space between the wind and her reaction to it. Every time she felt a draft, she did not just feel the cold, she felt a surge of fear that she was failing. She added a layer of judgment to her experience, telling herself that she was not enough, that she was not doing enough, and that her failure would be her undoing. This is what the ancient teachers often called the second arrow. The first arrow is the life event itself, the natural challenge or the shifting season. That is enough to handle on its own. But the second arrow is the one we fire into our own hearts, the story we tell ourselves about why we are struggling or why we must be perfect to be safe. Kaylin spent years firing that second arrow over and over until the wound became her entire identity. She believed she was a protector of the temple, so she felt she had to be as rigid as stone. But she was not stone. She was a human heart, meant to be as flexible as the veil she wove. When we carry our burdens with such intense, frantic gripping, we are essentially trying to hold a lantern by the flame, hoping it will stay lit. We think that if we stop, the light will vanish. But the light does not belong to the hand. The light belongs to the essence of the flame itself. Your value is not something you have to manage or defend. You do not need to polish your own soul to make it shine. It is already luminous. The effort of the polishing is actually what keeps you from seeing the light clearly. Consider how often you find yourself in Kaylin's hut. Maybe you are not weaving temple veils, but you are weaving expectations for how your day must go, or how you must be perceived by others. You hold the threads of your reputation, your career, or your relationships so tightly that you cannot feel the air moving around you. You fear that if you let go, the structure of your life will collapse. This is the great illusion that keeps the mind awake when it needs to rest. We believe that control is the same thing as safety. We believe that if we think about the future enough, if we rehearse every conversation and analyze every mistake, we are somehow creating a shield against the unknown. But we are only creating a storm of our own making. This teaching does not ask you to stop caring about your life or the people you love. It does not suggest that you should become cold or indifferent to the world. That is not the way of peace. The way of peace is to realize that you can engage with the world without becoming a prisoner to the outcome. You can weave your tapestries with care and skill, but you do not need to believe that you are the architect of the universe. When you see a flaw in your work, or a mistake in your past. You do not need to tear yourself apart to fix it. You can simply notice it. Understand that things in this world are always changing, and continue moving with the rhythm of your own heart. The master weaver did not tell Kaylin to burn her loom. She did not tell her that weaving was wrong. She simply showed her that the veil was not a wall. You do not need to discard the parts of your life that bring you meaning, but you can learn to hold them differently. You can hold your responsibilities with an open palm rather than a clenched fist. When you clench, you are focused on the tension in your own muscles. When you open, you are focused on the world itself. You can feel the difference in your own body right now. Take a moment to notice where you are holding on, where your thoughts have been tightening around, a particular worry or a specific expectation for tomorrow. You do not need to resolve that worry to be at peace tonight. You only need to notice that the worry is a visitor. It is not the landlord of your mind. It is a passing thought, triggered by the habit of trying to protect yourself from an imagined storm. Even if the thought feels very real, even if it carries the weight of a heavy metal lantern, you are allowed to set it down on the floor. You are allowed to let the room be dark for a little while. The world will not break just because you choose to rest. The sun will still rise, the river will still flow, and the threads of your life will still be there for you when you wake. You do not have to finish the tapestry tonight. The feeling of being enough is not a destination you reach after you have fixed everything. It is the natural state of your being when you stop believing that you must constantly earn your right to exist. We often think that peace is something we must fight for, but it is actually the byproduct of giving up the fight. When you stop bracing against the unknown, you find that you were never as fragile as you thought. You are capable of moving through the changing seasons of your life without needing to turn every moment into a fortress. When you look back at your own life, you might see the times you acted exactly like the weaver in the hut, trying to seal every crack in the wall because you were terrified of the draft. Do not judge those moments. They were not failures. They were just expressions of a frightened heart, trying to find safety in the only way it knew how. You were doing your best with the understanding you had. Now, you are beginning to understand something else. You are beginning to see that the safety you crave is not found in the perfection of the veil, but in the spaciousness of the room itself. As you listen to these words, feel your body beginning to align with this truth. The muscles in your shoulders do not need to support the roof. The breath in your lungs does not need to guard the entrance. Everything is moving exactly as it must. The wind is blowing outside. The stars are in their silent, infinite dance, and you are here, safe and unburdened, in the middle of your own life. You are not the weaver. You are the space. And in this space, everything is already whole. We will carry this understanding into our next time together, where we will look at a second story about a stone carver who was trying to find his reflection in a boulder. For now, simply sit with this thought. You do not need to carry the lantern to provide the light. You are the light. And the light does not need to be protected from the dark, because it is the very thing that reveals the nature of the night. Let your breath become a little deeper, and let the image of the open loom settle into your mind. There is no urgency here. There is only the quiet, steady rhythm of your own heart, which has been waiting for you to come home all along. Now, we bring this understanding into the quiet space of your own body. You have been carrying your own heavy, ornate lantern for a long time, shielding the flame from winds that were only ever meant to pass through. You do not need to do anything to fix this tonight. You do not need to achieve a state of perfect emptiness or stillness. We will simply sit with the weight you have been holding, and we will practice the art of setting it down just for a few moments to see what happens when the lantern is finally placed upon the floor. Close your eyes if that feels natural, or let your gaze soften until the edges of the room seem to blur. Take a slow, steady breath, not because you are trying to change your rhythm, but because you are acknowledging that you are here, in this room, in this moment. Feel the weight of your body pressing into the mattress, and notice the places where you are still holding yourself rigid. Perhaps your jaw is tight, or your shoulders are pulled toward your ears, as if you are still standing at the loom, bracing for the next cold gust. When you notice that tension, do not judge it. Do not tell yourself that you should be more relaxed or that you are failing at this practice. That judgment is just another heavy layer added to the lantern. Instead, simply recognize it. Name it to yourself quietly as a habit of the mind. You might say, I am bracing again, just that. When you name the habit, you create a tiny, precious space between the habit and your true self. You are the one who notices the bracing, which means you are not the bracing itself. Now, bring to mind one specific worry or task that has been demanding your total attention. Maybe it is a conversation you are replaying, or a fear about tomorrow, or a sense that you are falling behind in some way. Visualize this worry as a small, heavy object. Imagine it is a piece of that ornate clay lantern you have been carrying. It has a shape, a weight, and perhaps even a texture. It feels solid in your hand, and for so long you have believed that if you let it go, it would vanish or leave you unprotected. Hold that worry in your imagination for a moment and feel how your hand tightens around it. Feel the fatigue in your fingers, now very slowly, as if you are moving in a dream. Imagine yourself placing this object onto the ground beside you. You are not throwing it away. You are not pretending it does not exist. You are simply setting it down. You are allowing the floor to take the weight for a while. You are letting the lantern sit in the quiet, unmoving dark. Watch what happens when your hand is empty. Notice the feeling of blood returning to your fingers. Notice the way your shoulder drops, just a fraction of an inch, now that it no longer has to support that specific worry. You are still you. You have not been extinguished. The light within you has not vanished because you stopped gripping the clay. In fact, you might notice that the light feels a bit clearer, a bit less obscured by the frantic energy of your own hand. If your mind rushes back to pick the worry up again, that is perfectly fine. It is what minds do. They are experts at protection, and they will try to snatch the burden back the moment you let go. Do not fight the mind. Do not scold yourself for returning to the old pattern. Simply smile at the habit. Acknowledge that it is trying to keep you safe, and then gently, with the patience of a mountain, set the object down again. You can do this as many times as you need. There is no limit to how many times you are allowed to rest. As you breathe, imagine the wind of your own expectations blowing through the room. But this time, imagine it is passing through you rather than hitting you like a wall. Feel the air moving against your skin. You are not a fortress. You are a channel. You are the space in which life occurs. When you stop trying to be the barrier, you discover that the world is not as threatening as it seemed. The shadows in the corner are not monsters. They are just shadows. They are allowed to exist, just as your fatigue is allowed to exist. Sometimes we are afraid to let go because we fear that if we become empty, we will have nothing to offer. We think that our value is in the things we carry, the tasks we complete, the burdens we manage for others. But think of the bowl in our story. A bowl is only useful because it is empty. If it were filled with dirt or stones, it could hold nothing. Your emptiness is not a lack of worth. It is the capacity to hold the present moment as it is, without trying to twist it into something else. Rest your awareness on the rise and fall of your chest. Do not try to control the breath. Just notice it. It is happening all by itself. A natural rhythm that has been with you since your first moment of life. It does not ask for permission to flow. It does not worry about whether it is doing a good job. It just breathes. And so, for the next few moments, you can simply breathe along with it. You are part of that same natural cycle. You are allowed to move at your own pace, even if that pace is very slow, even if that pace is simply standing still. You might feel a sense of relief, or you might feel a lingering sense of fear. Both are welcome. If you feel fear, notice where it lives in your body. Does it feel like a knot in your stomach or a tightness in your chest? Bring your attention to that area, not to change it, but to keep it company. Imagine you are a kind friend sitting beside yourself, offering a steady, quiet presence. You do not need to fix the fear. You only need to witness it without turning away. The fear will soften on its own once it realizes it does not have to be the one in charge. Let your hands rest on the bed, palms open. Feel the softness of the sheets, the temperature of the air, the gentle support of the ground beneath you. You are held by the earth. You are supported by the very ground you walk on. You do not have to hold yourself up. You do not have to hold your life up. You can let the weight settle down into the mattress. You can let the day fade into the background, becoming a story that has already been told, a chapter that is closing its own cover. There is nothing left to solve tonight. The tomorrow you are worried about is not here yet. It is not in this room. It is a dream of the future, a shadow on the wall. By trying to solve it now, you are only stealing the peace that belongs to this moment. You are allowed to leave the problems where they are. You are allowed to walk away from the loom and leave the threads to wait for the morning. The temple will still be standing when you wake. The world will still be spinning. And you will still be you, exactly as you are, without having to prove a single thing. Feel the space around your heart beginning to open. This is not a grand transformation. It is a tiny, quiet shift, like the closing of a door on a windy night. You are moving from a state of performance to a state of presence. You are moving from the role of the protector to the role of the observer. Stay here for a few more breaths, just noticing the simplicity of your own existence. No tasks, no expectations, no roles to play. Just a person, resting in the quiet, breathing with the rhythm of the night. You are doing well. You are exactly where you need to be, which is right here. Letting go of the weight you were never meant to carry alone, in a quiet valley, where the stone is known to be as stubborn as the winter frost. Frost. There lived a master stone carver named Hideo. He was a man who believed that perfection was the only language the divine understood. For decades, he had labored to carve a single, monumental figure of a seated Buddha from a boulder that had been pulled from the deepest part of the quarry. Hideo was not just working with stone, he was working with his own desire to be remembered, to be seen as someone who had mastered his craft to the very edge of human capability. His hands were covered in a permanent map of calluses, and his back was curved into a permanent hunch shaped by the weight of the hammer and the constant internal pressure to fix every small imperfection in the granite. He was a man who lived in the future, always imagining the finished statue standing in the village square, being admired by all who passed by. He was never actually present with the stone. He was always 3 blows ahead, already worrying about the finer details of the face, already bracing himself for the possibility of a hidden crack that might ruin years of labor. His life was a narrow tunnel of effort, and he was the one digging it every time the chisel slipped or a piece of stone fell away. In an unwanted direction, Hideo would feel a sharp, biting anger. It was not anger at the stone, it was anger at his own perceived limitations, a cold, hard resentment that he was not powerful enough to force the material to match the perfect image in his mind. One morning, after he had spent nearly 3 years on the statue, Hideo was working in the early, biting light of dawn. The air was so cold, it felt like a blade against the skin. He was trying to carve the delicate curve of the Buddha's closed eyes, a task that required such precision. He had stopped breathing altogether to steady his hands. Suddenly his hammer slipped against the chisel, and a large, jagged piece of stone broke away from the cheek of the statue. It was a ruinous mistake. The face was gashed, the perfect line he had spent weeks planning was gone, and the stone looked as if it were weeping. He dropped his tools, his breath hitching in his throat, and he let out a sound of genuine, raw grief. It was not just for the stone. It was for the wasted years, for the endless, joyless effort, and for the sudden, terrifying realization that he had no control over this piece of granite, nor perhaps over anything at all. He felt a deep, hollow exhaustion. He wanted to walk away from the quarry and never touch a hammer again. Just then, he heard a soft, rhythmic sound. It was the sound of someone walking on the loose gravel near the edge of the quarry. An elderly man, a retired monk, who often walked the mountain trails, appeared in the doorway of the shed. He carried nothing but a small, empty wooden bowl, worn smooth by years of touch. The monk did not look at the broken statue. He did not ask what had happened. He walked over to a small spring that bubbled up near the entrance of the shed, dipped his bowl into the icy water, and then walked over to Hideo. The monk knelt beside the stone carver and held out the bowl. He asked Hideo if he would like to see the reflection of the sky in the water. Hideo, confused and still trembling with his own frustration, looked into the bowl. The water was perfectly still, and in it he saw the deep, blue expanse of the morning sky, clear and vast. The monk then gave the bowl a gentle nudge, just enough to send ripples across the surface. The reflection of the sky shattered into 1,000 dancing, shifting fragments. It was no longer a clear picture, but it was still the same sky. The monk asked Hideo if the sky had been broken by the movement of the water. Hideo looked from the rippling water to the gashed face of the statue. He saw the stone, not as a canvas for his own perfection, but as a piece of the earth, just as the water was a piece of the sky. The monk told him that his mistake was not a tragedy. It was simply the way the stone had chosen to reveal itself. He said that a carver who tries to force the stone to be something it is not will always be at war with the world, but a carver who listens to the stone will eventually find that he is not carving anything at all, only revealing what has always been present. Hideo felt the tension in his shoulders begin to loosen. For the first time since he had begun this work, he looked at the jagged scar on the statue's cheek, and instead of seeing an error, he saw a line. He saw a shadow. He realized that the statue could still be a Buddha, perhaps a Buddha who had known the sharpness of the world, a Buddha who had been marked by the same forces that mark all of us. He picked up his chisel, not with the frantic, heavy grip of the past, but with a lightness that felt foreign, yet right. He did not try to hide the mistake. He began to carve around it, letting the jagged line become part of the curve of the jaw. He found that he was no longer worried about the village square, or the praise of others, or the finished result. He was only concerned with the next strike of the hammer. He was present with the stone, listening to the sound of the metal meeting the granite, feeling the vibration move through his arms. He was not trying to win anymore. He was simply participating in the unfolding of the moment. The hours passed, the sun climbed, moved across the sky, and began to dip toward the horizon. Hideo did not feel the usual crushing weight of his day. He felt tired, yes, but it was a good, clean fatigue. He stopped working when the light became too dim to see, set his tools down in an orderly row, and walked out into the cool evening air. He did not look back at the statue with a sense of pride, nor with a sense of regret. He looked at it as one might look at an old friend, someone who had seen his struggles and accepted his presence. He had not become a perfect man. He still felt the pull of the old habits, the desire to achieve, the fear of judgment. But when those thoughts arrived, he recognized them as he would recognize a passing cloud. He did not jump up to chase them. He did not build his life around them. He breathed. He stood on the ground and felt the weight of his own body. He realized that he was just a human, a carver of stone, living a life that was as temporary and as beautiful as a ripple in a bowl of water. The monk, who had long since departed, left the wooden bowl by the spring. Hideo walked over, knelt down, and washed his hands in the cold, clear water. He looked into the bowl again. The water was still once more, and the sky was reflected in its depths, deep and calm. He understood that the sky did not need him to hold it together. It was always there, vast and unshakable, even when the water was still, and even when the water was disturbed. He stood up, feeling a strange, quiet peace in his chest, and began the long walk back to his hut, not as a master of stone, but as a person who was finally learning how to be a student of the present. The struggle he had carried for years, the weight of the ornate, heavy lantern of his ambition, had been set down. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, or how the statue would finally look when he was finished, and, for the first time in his life, that was enough. He walked with a steady, unhurried pace, and for the first time, he noticed the scent of the pine needles on the air, the way the light caught the edges of the distant mountains, and the deep silence of the evening. He was finally, truly, arriving at the place where he had always been. The stonecarver's journey to the quarry was not just a walk across the landscape, but a slow retreat from the war he had been waging against himself. You have lived in that same quarry, haven't you? You have spent your energy trying to hammer the raw granite of your life into the shape of a perfect, finished statue, fearing that if you stopped for even a moment, you would be left with nothing but rubble. This is the mechanism of the mind that keeps the heart from its rest. It is the belief that safety could be built through relentless control. We think that if we rehearse every potential mistake, if we judge every slip of the chisel, if we fix every perceived imperfection in our character, we are crafting a life that cannot be touched by sorrow. But look at what that level of control actually costs. It costs you the present moment. While you are busy carving the future into the stone of your mind, you are missing the light that is actually hitting the ground right now. You are missing the breath that is moving through your body, and you are missing the simple, quiet truth that you are already whole. The suffering you feel is rarely about the events themselves. When life brings a challenge, a difficult conversation, a mistake, or a change in circumstances, that is the first level of experience. It is often unpleasant, yes. It is sometimes painful, but it is finite. It is a moment that arises, exists, and then begins to dissolve. The suffering we actually carry, the kind that keeps us awake and exhausted in the quiet hours of the night, is the second layer. It is the layer of resistance. It is the story we tell ourselves about why the pain is happening, or the judgment we pass on ourselves for feeling it. When you make a mistake, the first pain is the regret itself. The second pain, the one that makes you feel broken, is the voice that says you should not have made it, that you are not careful enough, or that your value is tied to your ability to avoid flaws. That voice is a hammer that never stops striking. It turns a temporary mistake into a permanent identity. It tells you that if you are not perfect, you are not safe. This is the great confusion of the ego. It believes that by being the judge of your own life, it is protecting you from failure. But the judge is never satisfied. No matter how much you achieve, no matter how hard you work, the judge will always find a new gap in the stone, a new piece of granite that did not fall away exactly as planned. The fear of uncertainty is the engine that drives this cycle. We are terrified of the unknown, so we try to map out every single day, every single outcome, and every single response from those around us. We are trying to build a fortress out of thoughts. But thoughts are not stones. They are fleeting movements of the mind. Consider why. The stone carver finally found peace in the quarry. He did not achieve peace by magically erasing his mistakes. He achieved it by changing his relationship to the stone. He stopped seizing the jagged scar on the statue as a tragedy to be avoided and began to see it as a part of the reality he was working with. Peace does not come when you finally succeed in controlling everything. Peace comes when you realize that your worth is not something that needs to be carved out of the world. It is the very ground upon which you stand. You do not need to prove your existence through the perfection of your work. You have likely turned your pain into a kind of home. You know your insecurities so well that they feel like old acquaintances. When you are quiet, when you are not busy, you might feel a sudden, hollow ache. This is the fear of being nothing, the fear that if you stop the labor, you will disappear. But this is where the Buddhist insight shines a different light. You are not the labor. You are not the status. You are the awareness that notices the labor. You are the space that allows the statue to exist. And that space is never damaged by the slip of a chisel. It is never marked by the mistakes of the past. You do not need to fix your mind to find peace. You only need to stop fighting it. Think of the mind as a vast open landscape. Sometimes there is rain, sometimes there is wind, and sometimes the sun is bright and clear. You have been trying to stop the rain by shouting at the clouds. You have been trying to make the sun stay by holding up your hands to block the dusk. But the weather of your thoughts is going to move regardless of your approval. When you stop fighting the clouds to defeat, you are surrendering to the truth of the world. There is a profound, gentle strength in this surrender. It is the strength of the willow that bends in the gale, while the oak that resists is snapped in half. You have been trying to be the oak, trying to stand against the pressures of your own mind and the demands of the world. But your true nature is the willow. You are meant to be flexible. You are meant to be able to sway with the changes of your life, not because you lack courage, but because you possess the deep, grounded wisdom to know what is actually within your power. You have no power over the past. It is finished. It is a memory, an echo in the valley of your mind. You have no power over the future. It is a dream, a hope, a fear, but it is not here. You only have this moment. And in this moment, you are safe enough to let go of the hammer. You are safe enough to put down the chisel and look at the stone with eyes that are no longer looking for flaws. This does not mean you stop living or that you stop moving toward the things you care about. It means you stop moving with the frantic, desperate energy of a person who thinks their life depends on the next strike. Maybe you are wondering how you will handle the tasks of tomorrow if you let go of this tension. But notice that you have been handling them with exhaustion, with a sense of burden, and with a constant background hum of anxiety. This is not the most efficient way to live. When you act from a place of grounded presence, your actions are sharper, they are clearer. They are not muddied by the fear of what might happen if you fail. You can be disciplined. You can be careful. But you can do it without the weight of the world on your shoulders. You are learning to treat yourself with the same compassion you would offer to a friend who had made a mistake in their own work. If you saw someone else crying in the quarry because their chisel had slipped, would you stand over them and whisper that they were a failure? Would you tell them that they had ruined their life? Of course not. You would offer them a hand. You would offer them a moment of silence. You would tell them that it is just stone. And yet, you have been speaking to yourself with a cruelty you would never show another soul. This is the shift that changes everything. It is the beginning of the end of the war. You are moving from a state of being your own harshest judge to being your own most patient witness. You are learning to sit with the feelings that arise, even the ones you have spent years trying to drown out. When the fear comes, you can notice it. When the shame arises, you can see it. You do not have to become these things. You do not have to invite them to live in your house. You can observe them from the threshold, knowing that they are just visitors that will eventually make their way back out into the mist. There is a quiet, steady rhythm available to you right now. It is the rhythm of your own heart, which has been waiting for you to notice it. Even as the mind tries to pull you back into the old stories, you can gently steer your attention back to the breath. You can feel the weight of your body. Resting on the bed, you can notice the air filling your lungs. You are here. You are present. You are enough. Not because you have done anything to earn it, but because your existence is already a completed work of art, a living, breathing expression of the universe. Do not try to force this realization. It is not something you can grab with your hands. It is something that arrives when you stop chasing everything else, as you rest in the deepening quiet. Notice how much softer the room feels. Notice how the edges of your worries have become blurred, like the mountains in the twilight. You are doing the work of a lifetime by simply letting yourself be here. You are untying the knots you have spent years tightening. And as you release that grip, notice the space that is opening up inside of you. A space that is cool and deep and entirely, beautifully empty. This quiet clarity is not just for the mountain quarry. It is meant for the kitchen, the office, and the moments when you are standing in line, waiting for your life to feel more settled. We often think that mindfulness is a practice to be done on a cushion, in a place of total silence. But the true test happens when you are staring at your phone in the middle of the night. You know the feeling. You are lying in the dark, Your mind is buzzing with the phantom vibration of a message you have not received or a reply you are dreading. You feel the pull to check again, just to be sure, just to feel a flicker of control. In those moments, you are reaching for the lantern handle again, convinced that if you can just see the light, you will finally be safe. But what if you practiced the stone carver's stillness right then? When the urge to check the phone arises, notice the physical feeling of that pull. It is a tightening in the chest, a restless energy in your fingers. Instead of obeying the urge, just sit with the sensation. Breathe into that tightness. You do not need to check the screen to know that the world is still spinning. You are allowed to be in the dark without needing the reassurance of a digital glow. When you choose not to reach, you are choosing to trust that you are enough, exactly as you are, without any outside confirmation. That small choice, made in the middle of the night, is a revolutionary act of peace. Think of the times you feel you are falling behind, watching others move through life with a grace you feel you lack. You look at their polished surfaces and you compare them to the jagged edges of your own day. You feel the weight of not being enough, a heavy, cold burden you carry through your commute or your workday. But you are seeing only the finished statue, not the quarry where they too are likely struggling with their own chisels. When you feel that sting of comparison, remember the scar on the Buddha's cheek. Your imperfections are not evidence of failure. They are the marks of a life that has been lived, and they are beautiful because they are real. You do not need to smooth them over to be worthy of rest. There are days when you try to steer your relationships with the same intensity Hideo applied to his granite. You try to shape your partner, your children, or your friends into the version you have built in your mind, thinking that if they act a certain way, you will finally be safe from loneliness or disappointment. When they resist, you feel the familiar anger, the cold resentment of the one who feels they are losing control. But just as the stone has its own grain, the people in your life have their own rhythms. You cannot force them to be the reflection you want to see. When you stop trying to carve them, you might find that you can actually see them. And that is a much greater gift than the version you were trying to manufacture. You often feel guilty when you rest, as if you have not earned the right to put down the tools. You feel that if you are not productive, you are somehow disappearing or becoming worthless. But resting is not an act of negligence. It is a fundamental part of the work itself. Even the stone carver had to leave the quarry to let the granite breathe. When you choose to sit in silence, or to take a walk without a destination, or to simply lie in bed without a purpose, you are acknowledging that your value is not a commodity to be traded for performance. You are reclaiming the right to be a person, not a tool. This does not mean you abandon your responsibilities. It means you stop doing them from a place of fear. You can be the most diligent person in the world while still carrying a heart that is light. You can finish your tasks, care for your family, and pursue your goals, but you can do it with an open palm. When you make a mistake, you can own it, apologize if needed, and move on, without building a prison out of your regret. When you are disappointed, you can feel the sting, acknowledge it, and let it pass through you, rather than keeping it stored in your basement as a permanent tenant. You might notice that, even as you try to apply this, the old habits return. You will find yourself gripping again. You will find yourself rehearsing the future, judging your past, and feeling the old familiar anxiety rising in your throat. Do not let this discourage you. The fact that you notice the habit is the victory. You are no longer the one inside the loop of the habit. You are the one standing outside it, watching it spin. That distance is where the freedom lives. When you catch yourself in the act of tightening, just smile. Take a breath. Say to yourself, I am gripping again. And then, with all the grace you can muster, simply let your hands fall open. There is a rhythm to this. Some days you will be the master of the chisel, grounded and present. Other days you will be the woman in the hut, frantically trying to weave away the wind. Both of these versions of you are deserving of compassion. You are not a machine that must be calibrated to a permanent state of bliss. You are a living being, moving through a changing landscape, doing the best you can to navigate the currents. The grace is in the returning. Every time you realize you have lost your center, you have the opportunity to return to it. And that return is the most important movement you will ever make. When you walk through your day, look for the small sacred moments where you can practice this release. The moment you feel the itch of irritation in traffic, pause. Feel the steering wheel under your hands, but do not fuse with the frustration. Just notice it. When you feel the weight of an email that feels like a threat, pause. Take one breath before you decide how to respond. That one breath is the width of the entire world. It is the space between the storm and your reaction to it. It is the difference between living as a slave to your impulses and living as the master of your own presence. You are creating a new way of being, and it will take time for the architecture of your life to adjust. Be patient with the process. You are not building a statue in a day. You are tending to a garden that has been neglected for a long time. Some parts will grow quickly, and others will remain stubborn, hidden under the dry earth. Let them be. The garden does not need to be perfect to be loved. You do not need to be perfect to be at peace. You are already exactly what you need to be. And the work you are doing right now, in this quiet, soft dark, is already enough. You are becoming someone who knows how to listen, someone who knows how to witness, and someone who knows that the light does not need to be guarded, only lived. As you feel the weight of the day falling away, let your body find the deep, heavy rhythm of the earth. You are safe here. You are exactly where you are meant to be. The night is holding you, and for now, that is enough. The weight you have carried is finally shifting, not because you forced it to move, but because you stopped gripping the handle of the lantern so tightly. Feel the space where the tension used to live, a coolness spreading through your chest as the effort of protection dissolves into the quiet. You do not need to look for the light anymore. The light is not an object you hold in your hands or a task you must complete. It is the very essence of your being, always steady, always present, regardless of how dark the room around you might feel. Let the lantern rest on the floor. Let the floor support the weight of the clay and the dust. While you simply exist in the stillness, there is a profound, unhurried rhythm to the night. It is the same rhythm that guided the weaver in the mountains and the stone carver in the quarry. It is the rhythm of letting things be what they are, without the need for constant maintenance or repair. Your breath is moving now with a natural, effortless ease, rising and falling like the slow, deep currents of a river. Notice how the air enters your body, bringing with it a sense of release. And notice how it leaves, taking with it the final remnants of the day's demands. You are not holding on to anything anymore. You are not keeping watch over the entrance. The doors are open, and the house is safe. Your mind is like the quarry as the sun begins to set, the jagged lines, and the hard surfaces, softening under a blanket of deep indigo twilight. The mistakes you worry about, the conversations you replay, the fear that you are somehow missing the mark. These are just shadows on the stone. They have no power to change the fact that you are here, safe and unburdened, resting in the middle of a vast and gentle universe. Do not try to analyze the shadows. Do not try to smooth them out. Just watch them fade. As the light of your awareness settles into the comfort of the dark, the tapestry of your life is not a wall to be defended. It is a veil of experiences woven from moments of joy and moments of struggle, all held together by the simple, beautiful fact of your living. You do not need to fix the holes. You do not need to mend the threads that feel frayed. The light of your own true nature will shine through those spaces just as clearly as it shines through the solid parts. You are allowed to be incomplete. You are allowed to be finished for the night. You are allowed to stop being the one who holds everything together and instead be the one who finally, completely lets go. Feel the support of the earth beneath you, a solid, unwavering presence that holds you just as it holds the mountains and the rivers. There is nowhere else you need to go. There is nothing else you need to achieve. The ambition that drove you, the fear that kept you awake, the hunger for approval that made you perform, all of these are softening into the background. They are losing their urgency. They are becoming whispers in a dream that you are slowly, gently waking from into a state of deep and total peace. Your body knows exactly how to rest. It has been waiting for this permission, waiting for you to stop the frantic, endless cycle of the lantern bearer. As your limbs grow heavy, as your mind grows quiet, imagine the lantern sitting on the floor beside you, its light casting a soft, golden glow that warms the air but requires no effort from your hand. You are that light. You are the warmth. You are the safety you have been looking for. And in this realization, the need to protect yourself vanishes, leaving only the soft, velvet silence of the night. Every breath is a little deeper now, a little slower, pulling you down into the bottomless well of rest. The world is far away, a distant hum that no longer demands your attention. Your responsibilities are resting too, waiting patiently for the dawn. But they do not belong to this hour. This hour belongs only to you. This hour is for the quiet, for the deep, for the unfolding of your true self in the safety of the dark. The threads are resting. The stone is still. The weaver is asleep. The carver is at peace. There is no more need to plan. There is no more need to regret. The past is a closed book, and the future is a field of stars that will take care of itself. All that remains is the pulse of the heart, the rise and fall of the chest, and the profound, beautiful emptiness of the present moment. You are falling into the space between the thoughts, into the quiet gap, where nothing is required and everything is enough. You are safe. You are held. You are home. If the morning feels far away, let it stay there. If the tasks of your life feel like someone else's concern, let them be. You have given yourself the greatest gift of all, which is the gift of simply being, without the need to become anything more. As you drift, feel the last of the tension, leaving your jaw, your forehead, and the small spaces between your thoughts. You are dissolving into the night, and the night is receiving you with open arms. And what if the quiet you have found tonight was not something you had to earn, but something that has been waiting for you to finally stop holding the lantern, so you could feel the warmth of your own light?